Welcome to our webinar today. Today our topic is about Epicor's connected process control and how you can use it to achieve standardized process controls with embedded digital work instructions. With us today is Josh Easterling. He's a senior territory manager at Epicor, and he will be speaking on this topic. Josh has been working in the MES world for a number of years, but before I turn it over to him, Creative is a manufacturing technology partner. We are customer-centric, as you can see, and we have offerings in IoT, PLM, analytics, qualities, all these things you see here with AI running throughout. We do have a heavy concentration in A&D, for which CPC is an appropriate tool, as it is for any manufacturer. You're going to get a good introduction today about CPC's rich offerings, and we look forward to connecting with you after this webinar and helping you along that journey. I'll turn it over to you, Josh.
Great. Thanks, Mary Chris. Greatly appreciate that. And working hand in hand with Creative, always a pleasure. So as Mary Chris mentioned, morning, everybody. My name is Josh Easterling, Senior Territory Manager here for Epicor's Connected Process Control. And I'm going to guide everyone through today, telling you a little bit about CPC, who we are, what we do, and we're actually going to run a part and be able to visualize that operator interface today so that you really get to see a bird's eye view into what we do and how that's being done. So to kind of start off, it's just our safe harbor statement, because I'm going to be presenting some materials and information today. And what this does is this protects me, because we all know in software things can change. So as an introduction into connected process control, we are an MES, which stands for Manufacturing Execution System. And so anywhere where you have operators or technicians and you're looking to guide them through and standardize those processes, that is where we're going to fit in. We also can be collecting data along the way and connected to devices. And so we're going to talk a whole lot about that today. Now, the initiative of the presentation is, how do we get all of this done, and where do we start with all of this, right? Because as we all know, in manufacturing, it really needs to be a phased approach, so this is done appropriately and correctly, so that it is as efficient as possible. And so when we discuss how to implement solutions like this, a lot of times they have equal levels of importance, and a lot of my clients are somewhat confused sometimes on really where to start, right? We need to digitize our work instructions and get off paper. We need better quality gates. We want it error-proof to catch mistakes now versus later down the road in the production line, right? Or you need to collect data to provide to your end clients, or even for continuous improvement initiatives. We're going to be able to help aid in all of this, and that's what we're going to cover today, kind of how we do that and what that approach looks like. So, realities that are really impacting, all of manufacturing today, independent workers, retention is really harder than ever. We hear a lot of this. Workers must become competent and get up to tap quicker now because of the need and because of the complexity of the products, right? We're not just building the same model over and over and over again. You want to offer your end clients, more proliferation of product or more options. That's where we've gone as a society. Quality and compliance pressures, right? It's really intensifying, where you could provide just a little bit of data back to your end clients now. Now they want more of that data. They want to see why you're insisting that you're this world-class quality and manufacturing facility. They want to see proof, tangibles, and, connecting to devices as well, the whole Industry 4.0 piece as well. So the best way to do this is going to be to control that process and to control the outcome as much as we potentially can. And so CPC really helps with this. And the way we do that is with our connected worker platform. Those digital work instructions that are provided, inspections and quality checks, device connectivity, traceability and genealogy. Any of those processes that you're looking to standardize so you have that consistency factor is where CPC is going to come in and help by having a screen up that walks operators through what needs to take place specific to that work order or that job order. There's no more having to go out and, potentially find where different documents or materials live or flip through binders. That's going to be provided to them specific to what the job order calls for, so that it's the exact information they need at the point in which they need it. Control and guidance, being very important, needs to be placed in a way and implemented in a way to where you have sequential process control, meaning, step one needs to be complete before step two is started. Our end clients, at the end of the day, everyone's end clients appreciate consistency. In order to do that, we need to make sure, no matter what location an operator is working at or different cell or line, those products that they're building, inspecting, shipping, all have those consistent processes in place to ensure not only quality, but every part being very consistent. So device connectivity, anywhere you can interlock into a device. Examples would be like an open protocol torque tool or an IO light, a PLC, scanners, gauges, scales, right? Anywhere we could be interlocked into that process and take out the human error is always beneficial. But that might not be something that you're ready for. So within our system, it's very flexible to where operators can even be manually just typing in values. And you're going to see that when we go live in our instance and actually show, and it is an operator running a part. Quality and compliance and all of your error proofing and traceability so that you have full genealogy of what's taken place and where those parts are so that you can have more live real-time analytics, right? You don't want to wait till days after to find out you had a problem. You want to catch that problem right away and stop that problem at the source. So we're not manufacturing goods that then need to go back through different processes to be fixed. Efficiencies and performance, as I was just mentioning, the real time and the collection of tribal knowledge as well. I think we all learned a very valuable lesson during COVID, and that is this tribal knowledge really needs to be documented appropriately, because when we're training that new age and the new employees coming in, we need to make sure we have the correct and efficient data to provide them to get them up to tack. So these are a lot of our features that we have listed, and everybody will get a copy of this presentation after. And we also have a Q&A session as well. So that will all be enabled where you'll be able to raise your hands and ask questions. And Mary Chris will aid me in potentially reading off some of those questions with whatever allotted time we have left at the end. So, work instructions, device and IoT integration, quality and traceability, and operations and performance. We talked about a lot of this. We have this covered. We've been doing this for a very long time. So what does CPC mean for you, right? For operators, clear task guidance. Supervisors, live visibility. Quality, production, you're going to get the traceability and error proofing information you need for that continuous improvement initiatives and to give back to your clients. Finance is going to have improved cost control through this as well. We capture time down to the task level, which is the sub or the step level. And again, we'll see this, and that holds tremendous value from an accounting perspective. Dollars against job need to be accurate, right? IT managers, we have this simplified device integration where we can connect to anything that has communication capability. And so this being a no-code, low-code configuration platform really helps and aids with that. And then, all of your executives getting those cost-saving analytics and full genealogy really helps with the operational efficiencies and cost savings as well. So for CPC, connected process control, This can be standalone, or we've integrated in with Kinetic. So I'll be showing you the integrated model today, but I have clients where they might say, well, we're not ready for that integrated piece yet. We want to see this siloed out on our floor and this work in a standalone environment to prove that concept out. This is a very scalable platform. And so it's very nice in that way of you don't have to go directly to the integrated model. However, it holds tremendous benefit, and I generally recommend that so that you're getting the most out of our application. This can be an on-premise installation or cloud. Again, I always recommend on-prem, and that is because we're shop floor production control, and there's no room for latencies or security breach hiccups or anything of the sort, right? So I do recommend on-prem, but I have some clients running in the cloud. Our tech stack is a Linux operating system and a MongoDB database, and it's very flexible, being that no-code, low-code solution. We did get our start in automotive in 1989. That is where we evolved from as a company. And the most important lesson we learned is if the software is not easy to use, it doesn't get used. So we've worked over a lot of years and put a lot of resource into making sure this is very intuitive, not just from an operator standpoint, but from engineering as well. And so we'll take a look at that. It is a web-based application. So Chrome, Firefox, or most modern version of Edge browser, you would pull up and you'd be able to log into CPC. And our billing model is subscription-based. And our licensing model is we license by the station and functionality. Look at a station as being concurrently run stations. So you could have 500 stations configured, but if you're only logged into 20 at one time, you'd only need to be licensed for 20 stations. And then the functionality. There's lots of different solutions baked into our application. We only want you to have to pay for what it is that you're utilizing along the way. So to talk a little bit about the Kinetic integration, we utilize what's called Data Fabric. And that is the means in which we would be communicating between Kinetic and CPC with that data flow going back and forth. So Data Fabric would be the API. And so the operator interface that we're going to go into live looks just like this. And I'm going to explain as we go in live what all of this means and what's included on this screen. A quick customer case study. I personally always like to know real case scenarios. It's great for a salesperson to pull up an application or a document, but I want to know how other customers are utilizing and using these solutions today. So we have one customer that I have in mind, and I love the feedback that they provided to us because they let us know that the operators are no longer just executing tasks as a day-by-day operational piece, but they're really driving performance, right? We're implementing different solutions and modules, and they're using that data to point out and drive where those next initiatives need to be. And that's why they're driving that performance. So their visibility and control that they gain help transform their line to be much more efficient. In fact, by over 30%. Their customer problem that they really had when they first came to us is they didn't have any process control. The bottlenecks were unclear. So how do you know where to make improvements if you don't have that data? They were doing a lot of manual work, a lot of manual quality checks, and you all can picture it with the signatures and then losing this paper or misplacing it, or maybe those signatures didn't take place or weren't legible. And then obviously the paperwork instructions, and that becomes, difficult to train and difficult to keep track of, right? Who knows if someone doesn't misplace something or spill something, or, you turn on the fan and the paper blows everywhere. This is all going to be in a digitized format now with CPC. So how the client was helped was the results being increased productivity, okay? 42% increase in parts per hour. They had a huge cost savings over their enterprise of over $3 million in actual annual cost savings. They were able to get that root cause analysis that they needed, all that information, because of the controlled process, and analytics that they had at their fingertips. And then the quality tech enablement as well. So, transition from data entry into viewing that data as well. So instead of, those personnel just data entering all this information into multiple different systems, that's now being done dynamically so that you could take that time to view that data. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump out to a live CPC demonstration as if I'm the operator. So as I do this, I'm going to go ahead and just make my screen a little bit bigger so you could see the actual interface of that. But you can see I'm just browsing out to a web browser right now. Again, we are just web-based. So this is the environment that an operator would come in. And so I'm already logged into CPC up top. That's my login. And so this will be the environment where that operator or technician will now log in or out of Kinetic as well. So as you can see here, it says login. I'm going to select that login. And whether this is a batch scan or an operator manually typing in those credentials, that operator is going to come in and log into Kinetic or their shift as well directly in our environment. So what we've done here, just on that initiative, is we are trying to keep that operator in a single interface along the way. I hear a lot back from my clients where they're struggling because their operators, their technicians have so many different platforms to log in that they're struggling with their credentials or remembering what that looks like. And they're always asking, for password resets. We want to try to stay in one environment as much as we possibly can to avoid any of those problematic pieces or any confusions as well. Imagine an operator goes out and looks for information. They could pull up the incorrect information specific to the part that they're working on, right? We don't want that to happen. We want them to be provided all the accurate information they need at their fingertips. Now, we all know that operators are generally provided with materials and laminated sheets and binders, but I'm also going to tell you those binders are full of dust. And they're full of dust because they're not being looked at, right? They might be referenced, but they're not being utilized in the way they need to. So that means your operators are just guessing, and that's a problem at the end of the day, right? We don't want them guessing. We want things to be accurate and efficient. So now that I've logged into CPC and my Kinetic shift, we now have a work queue over on the upper right-hand side here. So I'm going to select what job is next in line here. And so the example that I'm showing you here is we're having an operator assemble or do a final assembly of a small engine. And here there's a quantity because we're working on a batch of products. So whether that be batch or single piece flow, you can have that set up in whichever way you'd like in CPC. Where I'm getting the information when I went into the work order queue is in Kinetic. When you release that job order, that is then associated or pushed down to that op that it belongs in. And so that's why up top you see what job I'm working on, the assembly, and then the op that it's in as well. So all of those permissions and authorizations also can be managed in CPC. Who is authorized to run what station or operation? Who is allowed to do what tasks? Meaning, if I'm an operator and I'm working through my process and it comes to a welding operation and I'm not authorized to weld, the system can recognize that. We would stop the operator. We could send a notification like a text or an email over to welding or maintenance and say, hey, right, get over to station 15. They need help welding. That's where the welder could come in. We would have them scan their badge and authorize they are certified to do that welding, and then it would get handed back to that operator. So that's just one example of what could be set up or configured in our environment. I'm going to select Start Activity so that you can see what this looks like from that operator perspective of running their job. So we keep track of timing. On the right-hand side, you can see there's a running actual timer. So this can also be hidden as well. If you have unions or policies that have something set up to where operators are not allowed to be timed and it to be visible, we can hide that, but we're still collecting all the timing on the back end. Okay. So the operators can run, but they can't hide. In the middle is showing the work instruction for that operator specific to the step that they're currently on. Here's what you need to accomplish, right? Up top are custom tabs. What if you want to provide them with PPE information or drawings or diagrams? Whatever materials that need to be provided at that station level can be applicable here. So those operators have all of their materials at their fingertips, like I mentioned. On the left-hand side is my linear sequential process. And I say it that way because that's how I have it configured. Okay. That means step 1 needs to be complete before step 2 gets started. Now, I do have some clients where they might allow operators to do some of these steps in whichever order they'd like. And so we can do what's called parallel tasks to allow them to do this. But again, I can't recommend that. And that's because of my expertise in these industries. If you want a consistent product, you need to make sure everyone's doing whatever operation that they're doing consistently, meaning Susie and Jimmy and Billy and Kathy, they all need to be doing it the same way, right? If you're letting them select what order of operations that is done in, at that point, in my opinion, you're letting the inmates run the asylum and they're telling you how they're doing something. And that doesn't equate to a consistent product. So I'll act as the operator running through. In the first task here, it says head cover install, and it's pointing to this work instruction for that operator. Now, this is a multitask view, meaning the operator sees what steps are in front of them. We also have a single task view that blows the work instruction up really nice. This generally works best on like tablets, and that way the operator is working on one step at a time, but there's no right or wrong on what that visual is. And then within this space, this is customizable as well from a sizing perspective. So installing my head cover, and it looks like I'm collecting some data here as well, because I want to know what lot I grabbed that head cover from, right? And that's for traceability. That way, if there's a quarantine and we find out from your third-party supplier that there was bad material that went into those head covers, you're able to have traceability and genealogy to see what engines took that head cover, right? We also have a materials button up top, and this is where I can also issue more material. I can either have the operator do that or send a supervisor down so that if in fact they did need to issue more material, I could select issue, put the quantity, maybe I need 1 head cover, and I need that from the production floor and the assembly area. And now what that could do is that could kick off a notification to a water spider or a part picker to say, hey, I need you to go get this and bring this to the operator, or the operator can grab it themselves, obviously. But because we did that, and because we're tracking consumption, we now will make sure when this operation is complete, that all the material consumed gets pushed back to Kinetic. That way that can be pulled out of the inventory. So all that could be tracked in our system. So I install my head cover, and I have a scanner on my desk, and I'm just going to scan a barcode that I have here. And that's showing you that in order to advance the task, they could either select OK, they could advance it by bringing it in from a device, or it could be a timer. And I have examples of a lot of those here built into this presentation. You're also going to see the work instructions change from time to time as well. And that's because I have different examples. The visual aid could be a GIF. It could be a PDF. It could be a static image. It could be an MP4. So there's lots of different images on what that multimedia could be for an operator. Now here I'm asking them to pick a part that could be crucial to quality, right? Maybe you have 5 mufflers or 5 harnesses and they all look similar in style. Well, if I ask an operator to pick the correct one and scan a value, we could recognize that they're picking the correct one, whether that's for assembly or even like a kitting operation. So if the operator walks over and grabs and scans the wrong one, here's what could happen. You'll see here that that wasn't the correct one. And so the work instruction changed for the operator saying, hey, you've done this incorrectly, and here's the avenue we're going to send you down now to do it appropriately. Okay? That's all configured by you. Do you want them to scrap it at this point? Do you want them to reject the process out? Do we want a supervisor to come over? Do you want to allow them to retry it? You're going to have all those anomalies configured, so the operator doesn't have to make those decisions, right? You're pointing them in that direction. Hey, you're going to retry it. And maybe we give them one try, and they go and they select the right one this time, and we recognize that and allow them to advance into their next step. I mentioned the visual aid could be a PDF. So within the PDF here, they act as they do in their natural habitat. You could scroll through it, you could zoom in, you could zoom out, you could jump to specific pages. So these work very well in our environment and can be imported in because we have a work instruction editor where you can create your own work instructions or import in what you currently have developed. So the next step is asking me for that muffler install, and we've pointed to a specific page. And you can see there's a required field and a not required field. We're capturing time down to the task level here, as I mentioned. So those operators are going to potentially look to justify if something takes them longer. Maybe they say, hey, I had to clean the part, right? They're justifying why that took longer. And yes, we do have spell check as well, which apparently I need today. And then the batch of that muffler. We can do countdown tasks. So there can be an allotted amount of time. Once that time expires, it automatically moves to the next step, and the operator doesn't have to touch or work with the interface at all. That would happen in interactive or dynamic. And if that's premature, they could always go back and look at any step they'd like to as well. This next task type is one of my favorites. It's called our decision task. So anywhere where an operator could potentially have to make a decision, we could send them down a different avenue. The example I have is testing a heat shield onto an engine. So it says, test fit this heat shield onto the engine. If it fits, hit OK and pass. And so we're going to do that. And you can see it advanced because everything was correct. No harm, no foul, everything went smooth. But what happens if it doesn't go smooth? If it doesn't, they're going to hit reject. And so you could set up codes in the back end, and that operator is going to select exactly why they're rejecting that out, right? Maybe they say it's misaligned, and they could leave notes as well. Maybe they say, well, the flanges are bent, okay? Watch what happens on the left when I hit save. We know from that issue that they selected that they could potentially repair that right where they're at and continue to build up that part in progress. Meaning, we don't have to stop or have a non-conformance kickoff or have a supervisor over because we can point them in the right direction specific to the reason they selected. Now, if they selected a different reason, like maybe they say, well, it was damaged, that might then kick off a non-conformance, right? So it turned on a new step called heat shield repair, and that doesn't have to just be limited to one step. That could have kicked on 15 new steps to say, here's the process you need to go through now, specific to the failure or reject that was selected along the way. So I have clients that utilize this, and they might have a decision off a decision off a decision, and that dictates what happens next in a process even. This is also cross-operation functional. What that means is this. When this job order gets to another operation, specific to how I answered something here, could dictate what happens further down the line. So, for example, if I'm adding parts, and after I've added these parts, I somehow need to communicate with shipping to tell them, hey, you need a bigger crate to ship the engine. When this job order gets to shipping, a new step will dynamically be turned on, and it'll say, hey, you need the 8x8 crate instead of the 7x7. So that's what I mean by cross-operation functional, which is huge. That means there's a communication between ops, right? We could also have it set up to where if you don't have all green check marks in op 10, that work order can't be loaded into op 20. Why? Because everything isn't good. Now they're good to go on with their process and start that heat shield installation and inspection. We could collect tolerances. So whether an operator is manually typing a value in, or maybe they're using like a gauge or a caliper that has a data button on it where we're bringing in that information, that would just act as a keyboard wedge of data. And any device that has that information capability, communication could send that to us so that that operator doesn't have to, essentially pencil those data marks in. That would be taken from a device, even a testing piece of equipment. So I just manually typed it in. I'm going to go put a good value because you could see when I had a bad value, we grayed out the OK button. We said, you're not allowed to continue on with your process because that tolerance is out of spec. So you could set that up to where you allow them to accept that bad value or you stop them. I have it set to stop because I want to stop the problem at the source. So I'm going to put a good value so we can keep going. I'll put 11.5. We can also connect to many different types of devices, as I mentioned. So you could see here, I have a little camera here pointed towards a cup. Hello there, it's on my desk. And so anywhere where you decide that it holds a level of importance where you could be taking an image in your process, it holds tremendous value because then we memorialize that image and store it against your data. So you'll always be able to go pull up any job order or part and say, okay, show me all of the pictures and files and everything else associated with that job order, right? All being in one repository, and I'll show you that. So essentially, I have clients using this in shipping areas where they're taking a picture where they have cameras over a box to say, hey, here's what's included in this box. And then maybe, even point it at a scale so that if I ship products to my end client and they say, hey, I ordered 5 and you only shipped me 4, I have proof that all 5 of theirs are in the box. And that aligns with the weight on the scale. And that aligns with my maybe FedEx courier invoice information. So you could prove out that you did in fact send them all 5 of their parts, right? Or what if you're taking images along the way because you build a multi-layered unit and housings and everything else go on? If it gets down to testing and it fails, you don't have to take the whole part apart in different operations. Instead, you could be visualizing these images, right? There's a lot you can catch in an image. Maybe wiring is done incomplete or the wrong harness or soldering. Lots of examples there of where pictures really come into play and help for continuous improvement, help for proof from a client side, or even liability, right? Hey, we make parts for an airplane and these stickers have to be, visible to all of the different independents that ride in that aircraft. Well, you need to make sure that they put it on the seat correctly, right? You could do that with an image. So I'm going to hit capture image. And now, as you're going to see, I'm done running my process. So now I can report back how many good, rejected, or scrapped that are complete here. And I can hit OK. And that's going to kick back to Kinetic. So what information we're sending back to Kinetic is who did it, how long it took them, and what material was consumed along the way for this build as well. So that'll dynamically go back to Kinetic. And then it would be looking for me to grab my next work order and start that next work order. Now, equally as important to collecting data is being able to visualize it. So in our application, there's a few ways you could do this. In our part history reporting, you could come view everything by chronological order, or you could filter it out. I could come in here today and say, show me everything we ran today. And you'll see here is a practice part that I ran prior to the webinar. And then here's the part that we ran. So all my information is tied to this. And you can see I got my job, assembly, and op up here. And then I have my employee and what time they did it. And this is the operation that it went through. So if it went through multiple operations, you'd see that listed. So you'd have a birth certificate of everywhere that work order's been. It gives you the total time and the time down to the task level. Why is this important? Well, now you're going to be able to find out who does things most efficiently at a step level. So now when you do your comparison, you're going to say, okay, Susie does it the best. Maybe you hold a Kaizen event once a quarter and you buy the shop pizza and say, hey, everybody, we're going to do a working lunch today. And we're all going to show you how to install this gas tank the most efficient way. And Susie does it the best and she's going to show you. And so we're all going to want you to follow that lead because that's the most efficient way to do it. And we need you to follow that and be compliant because if not, the system's going to tell us by the analytics and timing that you haven't done it the way we've shown you, right? You have that data and that information now. All the process data, right? Lot numbers, supervisor scans, batch numbers, operation notes, any of that information or all those tangibles tied to that are recorded and stored here. We can keep track of part marriages. Maybe you have subcomponent parts that you build for stock and we're marrying parts onto a final assembly. If that's run through our environment, I can now dive into that muffler that was built as a subcomponent. Images, those are very easily viewable and downloadable. You can see the download here. And we can even store files as well. So an example of that is I have clients where, maybe they send some of their subcomponents out for third-party testing, and they want to attach the file to prove out that that was tested and inspected and valid and good. That way you have everything in one repository. And this information can be exported out. So if you have a business intelligence tool or a reporting tool, you can very easily just export this out as a CSV and dump that so you have all of your data all in one data lake repository. Now, we also have a business intelligence tool where you could parse through this information. Anything we're collecting. We know operator, task time, total time, process data, torquing data. So I could come in here and maybe this is a quality summary by time and say, okay, what has happened in the last month? And these are our live real-time analytics, right? Where are we bottlenecking? Where are we doing our best? That could be visible in a pie graph, in a line chart, in a bar chart. These could be out on a shop floor, visible to all, or you could be viewing it in a supervisor's office. I even have clients that just like simple reports like, what's going on in the shop today? What operators are working on what stations and what work orders, right? This is giving me all that information. How long they've been in station, right? So if your end client calls you and says, where's my parts? You're able to visualize and say, well, they're in the last operation right now. I know those are going out the door today, right? And you can give them accurate information. So just as important as collecting the data, to me, is being able to visualize, use it for continuous improvement, use it for giving back to your end client as well. So with that being said, that live demonstration is now good. So now what we'd like to do is potentially take any questions that we might have here from the group. So I believe that chat is enabled now. Do I have that correct, Mary Chris?
Yeah, you do, Josh. We actually don't have any questions as of right now.
Great. Well, if anyone does have any questions, please let us know here. I like some Q&A session here because I think anyone can kind of come up and present, some pre-set up information. I kind of like some of those live questions and being able to answer them. So if anyone has any questions, we're here to help you out with that. While we're waiting for anyone to potentially put their hand up or type, I've also have a slide up here. If you do have questions later on, that's more of how I operate. I'm kind of that Monday morning quarterback. These are the different contacts that we have set up here. Of course, we all know Mary Chris at Creative, so her contact information is there. You have my contact information, and also Bill Ridge. Bill Ridge is also a territory manager for Connected Process Control, and we have a divided territory there for that.
Oh, thank you so much, Josh. That was great. What a rich product.